Hello and welcome to the Breaking Free podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Francis, and today I'm very grateful to be joined by Luke Balcke. So Luke Balcke's an astrologer. He does a lot of awesome things. He's more than an astrologer. He's just an awesome Aussie dude. And our podcast last year was quite popular amongst my audience. Luke Balcke shared his story and some real deep stuff to do with his awakening journey. But today, Luke's on today for part two. We're going to delve into some astrology stuff, 2025 preview. We might even touch on some US politics circus stuff as well, I reckon. So it could be a mixed bag of things according to the astrology charts. Luke, welcome back again, mate. It's been a while, but I'm so glad you're here because this is going to be great.
Mate, thanks for having me. Yeah, it was a great chat we had last time, and I had a lot of people actually reach out to me after that chat and sort of thank me for my vulnerability and honesty and openness. And I really was quite sort of shocked. Actually, people that I didn't know were watching or following or looking at my stuff that I'd known from my past. And yeah, it was quite interesting. I had some people that I was like, oh, you listen to that? Because when you talk in these types of things, I don't really consider who might be listening. I just talk, right?
Yeah.
But it was really interesting. So obviously struck a chord with a lot of people, and people had the motivation to want to get in touch, and it was really really nice and humbling in a way.
Yeah.
So thank you for that opportunity. It was a great chat, and mate, I'm ready for cracking a few third eyes open as we
Yeah,
go.
that's awesome. Because I'll just touch on that too. I had a few emails and messages and stuff as well. Same thing about your vulnerability and sort of how I found you. And so, yeah, that was a really special podcast. For anyone that's listening and watching that's new to my show and new to Luke Balk's work, that podcast will be in the show notes. Just jump down there and you'll find that one. So, Luke, today, 2025. Actually, we'll start with how I wanted you to come back on this original time. We'll go to
Yeah.
2025 in a minute. So 2024 has been an interesting year, big
Yep.
year, a lot of shifts energetically, personally, worldly.
Yep.
When you did that Trump thing, there'll be a video somewhere in the show notes. I'll put that video in there too. Luke looked at Trump's birth charts. Take it away from here, Luke. Let's dive into how that all came about, and then let's do
Yeah,
it.
so as an astrologer, that's what I'm doing on a daily. I'm looking at the sky. I'm looking at all of the connections of the planets within the signs and their relationships to one another. And then I'm bringing that down here to our lived experience. And from a personal point of view, that's one part of the picture to sort of look at someone's life path is the integration of the cosmic sort of, energetics in relation to the individual. But there's more to it than just that. So it's not just about what's happening up there. There's a lot more to it. So I'd been looking at this, and as an astrologer, what we sort of do is we always look ahead to the major alignments that potentially are on our way and our radar. And in a way, pretty much since I would say maybe even 2001, even though I wasn't studying astrology there, a lot of people, astrological mentors of mine, have been sort of looking towards the 20s and 2025, 6, 7, and beyond as like, wow, this is going to be profound for the shift in collective consciousness and the way in which we live on this earth. So that's always been in my mind. But every year I'm sort of looking and going, what are the main, aspects and alignments that we could expect this year, and what do they sort of represent? So that when I'm then connecting with my clients, I already know that in, July of this year, there was going to be the Uranus Mars activation. So if I see that sensitive degree in someone's birth chart, I'm already ahead of the game. I'm already asking the right questions and saying what's happening in their life and giving them some sort of guidance. And the other thing that we do as astrologers is we look at charts. So Donald Trump has a chart, you have a chart, I have a chart, celebrities have charts, your friends, your enemies have charts, animals have charts, if you know when it was born, countries have birth charts. So I'd previously looked at Donald Trump's chart because he's an interesting character. And when you look at his birth chart, you sort of see it all symbolically laid out there with his energetics, and you're like, oh fuck yeah, no wonder he's the way he is, because there's this sort of connection or correlation to his birth chart and how he expresses his himself and his characteristics. So yeah, when I saw the this year there was the Mars Uranus activation. When dealing with Mars, we're dealing with accidents or attacks of a violent nature. Often we're dealing with weapons, or we're dealing with cuttings of things. So if you've ever had a moment where you've accidentally cut yourself, if you were to look at your birth chart, Mars is going to be involved in that alignment somewhere because Mars deals in sharp instruments and objects and cutting and blood and accidents.
Interesting.
I've had my fair share of Mars moments in my life. And then you deal with Uranus and you're dealing with the unexpected. You're dealing with the disruptive nature of things. You're dealing with sudden changes. So Mars accidents, attacks, sudden changes, disruptions, upheaval. And then this was really activating Donald Trump's birth chart. And in a way, so when there's an alignment in a birth chart, there's all different relationships to these alignments. Some are harmonious, some are neutral, and some are discordant. And this particular one was very discordant. So you're dealing with pretty malefic energy, a discordant alignment or relationship, and an activation of his chart, which hit his natal Mars. So it's an attack personal to him, right? So, I made a video and it was around that alignment, but I spoke briefly on, some US politics. I said, oh, this is a big mark here for assassination attempt on Trump. You watch this middle of July, it was pretty much to the day. And then it happened, of course.
Mm.
So, as a good social media person, you sort of grab that soundbite and you say, hey, I said this a few weeks ago. And it sort of blew up and put me into the sort of radar of people that hadn't come across the sort of work that I did. And it also gave validity to astrology. It's not just this
Yeah.
pseudoscience horoscopes in the magazine woo-woo bullshit. There is a correlation between what's happening up here and what's happening down here. The Hermetic saying, which is as above, so below, as within, so without, which basically means that what's happening up there is the macrocosm, the big picture. It's reflected down here in the microcosm, as above, so below. And we are a miniature of that. So as within, so without. So what's happening internally in us, energetically, plays out for us in our external reality. So, there's a way in which we can understand the communication of the cosmos and the individual, and then the reality that person is living is understanding the symbolic nature of astrology. And that's a language of the sky. So if you learn to understand and speak that language, then the sky will literally talk to you. And it does through symbolism. And my job is to interpret that and make sense of it. So I was lucky. Having said that, without, floating my boat too much, a novice astrologer could have picked that alignment and said, "Oh, this doesn't look good for sudden attacks on Trump." So you put all that together, and again, does that mean that every time that alignment activates his chart, that's going to happen? No, because we have to look at the individual's life experience and we have to look at the energetics or what we call the atmosphere around them at that time. So leading up to this moment, you got a lot of division in the US politics, and he's the sort of the bogeyman that everyone's sort of made out that he's the bad orange man, right? And there's a lot of attacks on both sides of their ideology, and so it was like there was a level of palpable tension that you could sort of feel. You have an alignment like that, and you're like, well, this is going to be a trigger event. When you're dealing with Mars energy, I don't know if any of your viewers are familiar with the tarot, because the tarot is the feminine aspect of astrology, is the masculine. So tarot is a pictorial sort of symbolic representation of the zodiac and the planets. So the card in the tarot that represents Mars as a planet is known as the Tower card. And it's lightning striking a tower and people sort of falling out of it, very 9/11-esque.
Mm.
And that's what happens, is that like that, whatever potency's there, whatever is not being realized its potential, whatever tension is underlying, a Mars activation will trigger it. And when it does, there's a spontaneous release of energy, and that's why it can, represent attacks, because people lose their mind or they act impulsively on their emotions, and then the next thing they've had an outward expression of anger or aggression or an attack on someone. That's a very Mars moment. And then the other end of that is an accident. So you did something without intention, and that's also a Mars trigger. It's like, you've ever hurt yourself, broken a bone, cut your skin, done something and made blood come out? It's Mars. That's what Mars represents. So putting all that together, looking at Trump's chart around that period of time, it was pretty obvious that, okay, this is going to be a moment to watch him. And yeah, next thing, he's literally pinged in the ear. Now, you could argue, was it a planned event? Was it a false flag? Was it like, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. What matters is there's a connection between what was happening on the earth and what was happening in the sky. And for Trump, his energetics represented by his birth chart, they sort of picked up that, received that correlation connection, that energetic sort of signal. And the next thing he experiences something like that. So that's the sort of nature of astrology, from the, transpersonal to the personal. How do we connect the big picture to the little picture? And that's the beauty of astrology, is that the main bulk of my work and the desire and passion that I have is to help people understand themselves and their life path, especially those that are transitioning from their conditioned belief system, their programming, the matrix style of, believing everything we've ever been told about this world, into the other side of that is starting to realize, oh, that's just a program. That's just someone's idea. It only exists in our programming in our mind, and that's being conditioned from birth. If you were to take a person experiencing conditioning and programming living within the matrix, and then you took a cow eating grass in the field, the world view that that person has is not shared by the cow, but yet they live in the same reality,
Mm.
right? So it's like, why is that different? You could say the cow is a simple animal and doesn't have the intelligence. No, it's just because it hasn't been exposed to the programming. You know what I mean? It hasn't
Mm.
been exposed to the programming. We've been exposed to programming since birth. We've been sort of unwillingly submitted to a sort of a control system. And, when you start to wake up from that, and everyone will have their own personal trigger to that awakening. I spoke about this a lot in our last podcast. You have to transition then from a world not only of who you thought you're supposed to be and the world you create based on that, but then into becoming who you were actually born to be, why you came here as a soul, what work you're doing as an individual to evolve your soul, because the work that you do as an individual ripples through the collective, and we all evolve as a result. But we've been systematically, for thousands of years, probably 20,000 years, we've been kept in the dark consciously, disconnected from our true,
Mm.
potential as divine beings, representation of creative God that runs through each and every one of us. So when you awaken, you start to realize that you have to reconstruct your entire self image, your meaning and purpose of life, and your actual reality. So the work that I do is I stand in that gap between that and that. And I sort of go, hey, you're not crazy. The world is. Hey, let me connect you to your birth chart. Let me help you understand yourself, where you're at. Let me help you understand what's next and how to move through that. And the reason I do that is because on my own journey, I went from that to that on my own and alone. And I did that without the tools or support. And I didn't speak to anyone about it. I didn't really sort of tell anyone what I was going through. I internalized everything. And I can tell you, I fucked up and made a lot of mistakes in that transition. And I was like, what the fuck? But through that process, I discovered astrology beyond the horoscopes in the magazine, the natal astrology and the interpretation of a symbolism. And then I started to learn about myself, my true self, through that medium. And it has been my guiding light ever since. So then I thought, well, now I need to know as much as I can about this so I can help other people transition. And they don't have to do it on their own. They don't have to do it alone, and they don't have to do it in the dark. So the chart really helps illuminate their individual path as we connect to, we're here as one unit, united humanity. There's only one human race. We've got to work it out, and we've got to help each other work it out. Otherwise, we're fucked.
Mm.
And we've been fucked 5 times. I think we're going to the sixth extinction level event, right? So we haven't yet fucking worked it out. And I know too, because the other work I do is past life regression therapy, and I've had a lot of my own regressions done. I've had 100 lifetimes that I can recall, not each individual one, but the quantity, right? And I know I was at the time of the last cataclysm on Earth, and I witnessed and died in the cataclysm, the flooding of the earth they speak about in the Bible. And what I was shown through my regression when I did that was the reason I was there was to keep a wisdom keeper of what happens to this world and the people on it when we collectively fall asleep, disconnect, and lose our way. And it's like, if you look around the world now, we've brought into this matrix, this illusion, this conditioned programming, and we've all bought into it because that's what we've been conditioned to believe in, right?
Mm.
And that programming is fucking keeping us disconnected from source, from self, from true self, from one another, from this earth. And we're fucking over each other and this earth. And because if we don't collectively wake up and transform, transmute change, we're fucking doomed again. And I've had that memory since 100 lifetimes ago that I've had to carry through every lifetime as I know this is all bullshit. And the persecution and the outcasting and the dismissal and, because I haven't aligned to the system. So yes, it's fucking big, and like, yes, the Trump thing is, oh, that's cool, but like, what are we really doing here?
Exactly.
What are we really doing here? Are we putting our faith in a Trump, in a
No.
system that he's trying to uphold, that system isn't generated or designed for the liberation of the people. It's the opposite,
Mm.
you know? So, yeah, as you can tell, I get passionate about this
I
stuff.
love it though.
That's how I came about the Trump thing. It was just more of a passing thing that, oh, yeah, well, this is probably going to happen to him.
There's
Um,
so much to go through with what you just said before, man. Like, it's so much bigger than that now. So, yeah, I've done some past life regression stuff too, and can resonate with what you just said about the cataclysmic event. And I do believe we're heading for that sixth one. Now, I was going to touch on that later, but you brought it up now, so it's like, well, how do the I honestly believe from my own sort of work in this space too, is that from 2020 was like a shift for us to either, well, as you said, wake up and smell the roses or continue down this path. And yeah, I resonate with everything you said about the ones that are where we are, that have influence, and not really influence, but a platform to speak about this stuff, is because I feel like we're both here to do the exact same thing. And that's wake as many people up to what's going on here. And a good question that I always ask my audience on my videos is, what are you really doing here? Like, I ask that all the time to whoever's listening. And it's a great question, isn't it? Because what are we really doing here? Are we working a meaningless 9 to 5 job and then coming home, having dinner with our families and separating and doing all shit that we don't enjoy? Like, our meaning and purpose is elsewhere. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Yeah, I love what you're doing and saying. So on all of that, how does the end of this year look into 2025 and beyond? Because you touched on it earlier, 2025, 6, 7, 8. What are we looking at here? What are the charts saying? What's going on? Let's do it.
Yeah, so let's just frame what's happening in 25, or the process begins in 25. It'll sort of culminate 26 and then complete 27, 28. And we're looking at the shift of all of the outer planets into different signs, but they're all doing it together. And they're going from feminine signs into masculine signs. And when they're doing that, they also then line up astrologically in relationship. So think of when there's planetary alignments, they've got a frequency, and when they share sort of harmonics with their frequency, there's a blending of their energies. So if that shared harmonic is harmonious, the blending of the energies can be powerful, transformative, experiences. And if it's, discordant, it can be chaotic, overwhelming, and crisis type experiences. But when you're dealing with Pluto, Uranus, Neptune, the three outer planets, you're dealing with transformational energy that operates from the collective unconsciousness. And when they impact on the world sort of events or in personal events, things change irrevocably. They never are the same again. They're completely changed to the core. That's the whole point of it. Is these energies, planets have existed long before humanity discovered them, and they were spoken about in mythology for thousands of years. But into our consciousness as a collective, they didn't really start to sort of impact on it until the 1800s, 1900s when they were discovered. So now they're a big tool within the astrologers' sort of toolkit to understand big cosmic changes and how those changes happening up here are reflected down on the earth. So as we move into next year, the beginning of this process, it's already started pretty much 2023. Pluto moved out of Capricorn into Aquarius. But because of the slow moving nature of the planet and its retrograde cycles, it's like two steps forward, one step back, two steps forward, one step back. So it goes into Aquarius, goes back into Capricorn. Spends a bit of time in Capricorn, then moves back into Aquarius, and then goes back into Capricorn. It's been doing that since 2023. It's now in Capricorn at the 29th degree, and it's just about to move sort of mid-late November into Aquarius permanently until 2040. Yeah, so that's the first of this shift. But then next year, Neptune changes signs, Uranus changes signs, Saturn changes signs. And when Saturn and Neptune change signs, they align at the 0 degrees, the alpha degree of the zodiac, the very start of the zodiac, and they conjunct. So there's a union of Neptune and Saturn coming together. So Saturn's conjunction with the outer planets historically represents a time on Earth where there's great impact and change, structural change to this world, the way it's governed, how its rules work, everything. So I'll give you a few examples. Neptune and Saturn last came together was 1989. And you got Neptune, which is disillusionment, and Saturn, which is structure. So the disillusionment of structure in 1989 was the breaking down of the Berlin Wall, which separated East and West. And that was post Second World War. Russia said, fuck that, we're having this bit. And, Germany said, well, this is our bit, we're East and West. And they literally built a wall. I was fortunate in 2020, 2002 or 2003, actually, I was there. I was able to go and visit Berlin and look at these areas where the wall was and the checkpoint Charlie and all that. And you just can't fathom, like in the one country, you got a fucking wall separating the same national people, right? And you go around there at all of the architecture and that, there's fucking bullet holes everywhere, and it's phenomenal. And that's like 1989. It's not that long ago. So did Saturn Neptune cause the wall to come down? No, but when that cosmic event happened, it correlated to the shift that takes place on the Earth. Saturn had a opposition with Pluto right on September 11 from the sign of Gemini when Pluto was in Sagittarius. Now, Gemini is the twins, and Saturn, structure. You got Pluto, death and rebirth, transformation through crisis. In Sagittarius, religion, ideology. So there was a religious war that started then. It was a breaking down of the Twin Towers. And that's the Saturn-Pluto opposition. They came together as an alignment, Saturn and Pluto, on the 12th, 13th of January, 2020 in the sign of Capricorn. So we all know what that astrological alignment was sort of like the initiation of COVID-19. So, when you've got these big alignments happening, you could expect some pretty big changes. So we've got a Saturn Neptune in 2025 and 2026 in 0 Aries. And then we've got Pluto into Aquarius and Uranus into Gemini. Now, Uranus in Taurus has been quite stable. We've had a shift of a collective values. You go back to 2018 to now, most people have changed their value system in relation to material possessions, money, and wealth. Before that, we're like, you got to burn the candle at both ends, and you got to make money, and you got to get to the top, and you got to have all this nice stuff. Now you can sort of look at people who are like, I just want simple. They don't have the desire for all of that, stuff, because Uranus frees us, liberates us from fixed Earth, Taurus, which is values, material, wealth, possessions. So we're liberating that. We're sort of breaking free from that sort of fixed nature of our value system, completely associated only to money or wealth or material things, to this sort of more freer process. Well, Uranus is going to move into Gemini, and that hasn't happened for 84 years. And Pluto is going to move into Aquarius. They're both air signs. The last time they were in Aquarius and Gemini, respectively, go back to the American independence and the French Revolution. So you've got to understand what was happening for the consciousness of the people at that time. In the US, they were saying, fuck you to the king. We're going to come out free country, right? The independence was independence from the king. And it was this ideology of what America represented, which was for freedom for the people, right? So you have that shift in energy, and they fought back and the people rose up and they took it. Now, Was there underhanded things? Was there, subversive stuff going on? Were there people controlling it? Possibly, but irrespective of that, you had a mass movement of people saying, we don't want that.
Mm.
We want to be free of that system, right? French Revolution, same thing. The French uprose and overthrew their government through the French Revolution. So astrologically, Pluto in Aquarius, Uranus in Gemini, both air signs, they make an alignment to each other, connects those energies. You got Pluto transformation, rebirth, death, and rebirth, and you got Uranus freedom, liberation, independence, individuality. So they're uniting, and in the middle is going to be the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. So Saturn doesn't like to be in Aries because it's in debilitation there. Well, it's in its fall. Saturn represents authority, rules, government, right? So it's in its fall next year. And then you have Neptune, which is disillusionment. It's dissolved structure and boundaries and rules and reality as it is. So you got this Neptune influence on Saturn that's already weakened. You got a collapsing of the old reality, the old rules. And what happens with Neptune is with the Saturn part of it, you've got the breakdown of the Pisces, the age of Pisces illusion that we've been living in. And the illusion we've all collectively been living in, not you and I, but collectively, people, think of everyone living right up until COVID. The illusion was the government's here to protect us, to keep us safe, to do the right thing. And then COVID happens and you realize that was a pre-programmed. I don't know if you're going to get censored for this, but that was a pre-programmed, pre-orchestrated event, right? That was initiated and enacted by the government on the people. And the impact of that was death. So really what happened was like, did you not see that you've been living in an illusion that the government's designed to help you? And look what happened. So people still clinging to that illusion as we get into the end of this year and into next year have got a nightmare coming because that illusion is going to be taken away and they're going to go. And when the illusion and the belief and the faith in the certainty of an external savior comes crashing down, you have people in complete despair, helplessness. Their whole life doesn't make sense anymore because they've been in the illusion, they've been distracting themselves from the reality of things with entertainment and meaningless sort of consumption of bullshit energy on all different levels, physically, emotionally, mentally, you name it.
Mm.
So that is all going to start to break down. So you could have people then losing losing control of, or their illusion of control, at least on their life and the world in the future. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that because we've lived that already. Like I went through
You
all
and
of that
I
at the start of
individually.
2020.
Yes.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
individually, personally. But it's like if we were to delve into the charts of us, like we were supposed to do that then, I think. That makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah.
Individually, you're supposed to wake up when the circumstances in your life create the necessary need for that awakening.
Yeah. Okay.
And, I don't like to sort of say I got to wake up people. What I've got to do is I got to be there when they wake up.
Yes.
I gotta be there when they wake up. Because when you wake up, you go, what the fuck? And I go, hey, hey, you're not crazy. You're
No.
welcome.
Yeah.
Right? Like Neo in the Matrix when he wakes up, he's what the fuck? What the
Yeah.
fuck? Right? And they're like, hey, it's all cool. Eat some porridge. It's all you only need the porridge. You don't need all that fucking bullshit illusion you've been
Mm.
eating. You just need porridge. It's got everything you need, right? So again, it's a metaphor for saying, hey, it's all good, but it's a little shocking. So yeah, since September 11, collectively the twins, right, is Gemini. Gemini, that represented the breaking of the mind control part here. They were sort of symbolizing that with the destruction of the twins. They're breaking down that axis of the mutable cross. That's a bit of complex for people. I won't go too much into it, but maybe for another time.
Yep.
You watch some other videos on YouTube, you'll understand what I'm saying. That axis on the mutable cross, they're taking us off the mutable, moving us to the fixed, is Gemini Sag. So they break down the Gemini quality here, and it's the breaking of the mind control. So it was the beginning of mass awakening, September 11.
Yeah.
And throughout history, there have always been individuals always awakening and questioning. And those individuals, too, they've been writing poetry and art, and they've been creating movies and music, and they've been trying to sort of show us, hey, the fuck, it's all bullshit. What are you doing? And we go, oh, isn't that a good movie or a good book or a good whatever?
Yes.
You got those types of awakening souls that have always been there. But since September 11, you got mass awakenings, and triggered all throughout. Mine started in probably 2012, but really kicked off in 2014, and then was there another trigger to this? Yeah, it was fucking COVID,
Yeah.
right? It
Yep.
was COVID. But all of September 11 and COVID has really been preparation for us as a collective for 25, 6, and 7. And then
Okay.
some might argue as well with if you've ever looked into the Phoenix event and the work of Archaics in
Yep.
YouTube. Yep. He's talking about the Phoenix event in, I think it's 2048 or somewhere, 2040 something. And that's a different, I think that potentially is the big cataclysmic type shifts that we have now, this 20-year period to really, as a collective, prepare for,
Yep.
which is the Earth changes on a major level. Because as we transition from one age to a new age, and you got to think of this out of the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius consciously, we shift our conscious awareness, we come into a knowing and out of belief. So we're no longer programmable by beliefs. We already know who we are, why we're here, what we're doing here. So we're going to then live on this earth differently. And what's going to happen, because we're going out of a feminine age to a masculine age, and we're going out of an earth water age into an air fire age, you're going to have climate change as an impact.
Uh,
It has to change, of
mm,
course. But what they've done, the sneaky fucking devils, is they've hijacked this natural phenomena and made out that it's our fault. It's a natural cosmic event that impacts how we live on the earth, and it has to change. We're going out of an age. Everything Piscean, the ideology, the belief system, the symbology, the way in which we live and operate on the earth, and the actual earth itself has to die, end. No more of that way of being. The age of Aquarius, completely different age, completely different way to live here, more awakened consciousness, and Aquarius is the age of humanity and the awakening of humanity. And in the age of Pisces, see, we had Jesus, who was the savior for our age. He was the Son of God that came here and said, hey, I'll die for your sins because you're all asleep in the age of Pisces. You're consciously disconnected from source. You don't know anymore. So you are completely lost. And when you're lost, you're going to fuck up, hurt yourself and hurt one another and hurt this earth. And I understand that. You don't know what you're doing. So I'll die so you can sin. And he says to God, hey, forgive them because they don't know what they're doing. That's to forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. Yeah. Why? Because we're in the age of Pisces, we don't know what we're fucking doing. Now, if you think about September 11 and beyond, but also through this time to now, we're waking up. So now when we wake up, we know that we don't believe we know better. Now we have to act better. We have to act
yeah.
unknowing. And when we do, and we start to awaken that knowing into our actions on earth here, we start to embody that consciousness here. We awaken the Christ in us
Yes.
individually. And as we collectively awaken the Christ within, we enter the age of Aquarius, the age of man, humanity, knowing. We're no longer lost swimming around two fish bowls, two fish in a fish bowl, like the Pink Floyd song, right? Which is the Pisces, the higher self and the lower self connected, but not consciously, and swimming in opposite directions. The higher self's pulling us up, and the lower self's going, but I like, I like entertainment, or I like this, or I like fucking money and shit, right? So we're lost. We come out of that, we're into the age of the water bearer, right? Which is the only sign in the whole zodiac that's a person. Yeah. You got Virgo, which is a virgin, different symbolism, but you got the man, which is the hue man, which is just a colorful man. It means we can see through the spectrum, not black and white, which is Pisces. Black and white, I'm right, you're wrong. Republican, Democrat, right? That sort of ideology of left, right sort of thinking into Aquarius, we're awakened. We've got humanity, humanitarianism, human, and
Yes.
man as in the opposite of woman. Man is men and women, but they're awakened into that hue of the full spectrum of color because we are individuals. We are all unique. We all have the spark of divinity within us, expressing uniquely through us in our life experience. And we're here to partake in that experience. And your experience is different to mine. Yeah. And it's different to the next person. But collectively, we are the fucking rainbow, right? The whole spectrum. And individually, we come together as a collective. That's the age of Aquarius. That's what's at stake here. That's what we have to awaken up to. That's why we have to let go of the illusion. And the sooner we do, the better. If we're unable, and COVID was a real litmus test, I sort of think that what they convinced us during COVID that was the majority of people that were inoculated and asleep, but I don't know if it necessarily, maybe it was a majority, but it wasn't to the extreme that they made out that, you know, the anti-vaxxers were like 5% of the population or whatever. I think there was much more people aware and awake and less connected, and they probably manipulated the numbers to let us think, holy shit, everyone's asleep. And I don't think they are, but also too, those that went through that have still since then subsequently awakened. I've had a lot of people that unfollowed me during 2020 because I was very outspoken. I was living in Melbourne and I was like, this is bullshit. I was unvaxxed, unmasked, unfucking lockdownable, all that. Just like, this is all crap. Making fun of it on my lives. And I had a lot of people unfollow me during that period, which in 2023 and this year, I've had those same people start following me again and reach out and say, I got to hand it to you, you know, when you were going crazy in 2020, I fucking unfollowed you. I couldn't deal. But now I see differently, you know. It's like, oh, well, good. At least you've had the sort of awareness to go, fuck, like I was asleep. So, you know, we've got to look at 2020 and say, okay, we have to awaken now. This whole illusion of someone's coming to save us, or the government's going to look after us, or Trump's going to win and everything's going to go back to, it's not happening. We're coming out of a complete age here. As we do, there will be the Game of Thrones playing out. So if listeners have watched the series Game of Thrones, that was a depiction of humanity's transition from the age of Aries into the age of Pisces, which was the last age change. And they warred to sit on the throne. So those people that have got, you know, I guess vested interest, let's say, in the control of land and resources and people, they'll be at war with one another because who's going to sit on the throne for the next age? Well, they can go to war, but they'll probably suffer self-annihilation because the next stage is ruled by the people. It's the people. It's Aquarian. And it doesn't matter how many casualties along the way. That's the outcome. The outcome is we get to the age of the people. And that's where we're going. Now, the old system and those that control it are fighting tooth and nail for us to stay stuck and asleep so that they can stay in power and they can stay in control and they can stay in their ivory towers, you know, and they have a very low view of people and the collective, you know, useless eaters, goyim, you know, that's the reference they make to most people. And rightly so through the age of Pisces, because they're all fucking asleep. Like, hello, you're all asleep. And they could probably and have done whatever they wanted to us. Well, that changes now because we say, like Neo in the Matrix, no fucking more. No, I'm not going to accept that as my reality. You know, that was the emergence of that defiance through COVID, which caused people to become ostracized, outcast, and divided, was them just saying no. And that's what I was doing in that period. It's like, no, I don't have to do that. That's not in my best interest. That's not actually in our best interest. That's control, you know. So that process that we went through was sort of like a bit of a foreshadowing of, you know, what we need to do moving forward. Now, I digress. Tangents, but if you look at the geopolitical situation on Earth at the moment, and you look at the economic situation and the disparity and the division, and you look at just people in general, especially through the Western world, There's a lot of instability. Let's just say there's a lot of instability, and it's most likely going to lead us into conflict for a resolution of that and the division. There's been extreme polarization. It's been happening since September 11, but really COVID really triggered that polarization. And now politically, it's even more pushed to the poles. Well, when you push energy into extremes, how it unifies is through conflict. So we're moving into conflict. There is no sort of, sugarcoating that. We're moving into a period of conflict because there has to be resolution of the imbalance, the disharmony, and the division. And we can't just all of a sudden just go, hey, Palestine, hey, Israel, let's have a cup of tea. China, Taiwan, do you want to just like, come on, everyone be love and light? It's not going to happen. So how does it resolve? It resolves through
Yeah.
conflict. Now, if we're going to go into some type of battle or conflict, and you're thinking on the scale of global sort of conflict, you're thinking World War One, World War Two, are we going into World War Three? And that can frighten people because just the term has been symbolized in
Yeah.
subliminal conditions as to, but you got to think about like what would life be like or had been like through that period of time. You're subscripted and you're sent off and you're like there fighting a battle in some foreign land. What for? Right? So if they want to push the people into a global conflict so that you go and defend your ideology, your country, your belief system, your religion, whatever, how do we get from where we are now to that? Because if they said tomorrow, we're at war, we need everyone to enlist, what? People are going, what? Fuck off. No. What are you talking about? No, we're not doing that. Nah, fight your own fucking wars. I think that's what most people would do. They'd be because they're sort of, shell shocked since COVID, and they're probably like a bit like, So how do you trigger people to want to go to conflict and war, to
Yeah.
fight? Or well, you need a Pearl Harbor, you need a Bay of Tonkin, you need a September 11. You need one of those events to shock people into a shift or a change. And I feel like that's probably where we're heading in the short term, towards the end of this year before we get to 2025. We're probably heading into some type of event on the scale of a 9/11 that could potentially be an activator for the next 2 to 3 years. So as this Game of Thrones is being played out, and as these cosmic shifts are changing this consciousness here, they can reset us. It's a last ditch attempt to reset the people back into that ideology, that belief system, and that's what they've been doing successfully for 20 odd thousand years. So this time we have to stand up against that. We have to defend against that. We have to not support that. And what is that going to mean? That's going to mean you have to stand in your fucking heart. You have to be so centered in your heart. You have to be so strong and courageous to be in your heart, to say no. And not like, damn you, and they're doing this. Just no, it's like Neo in the Matrix. At the whole movie, right? He spends the whole movie trying to dodge their bullets, only to get to the end and realize, no, he doesn't have to accept that bullet as real. And that's what we are doing individually and collectively through this next shift. We have to stay in our heart and say no. Now, it takes courage to be centered in the heart. That's why a lot of people are in their head because it's much easier. Oh no, I'm doing this. Oh no, I'm doing that. That's the battle of polarity, right? Played out between the left and the right, the masculine and the feminine, the dark and the light, and so on and so forth. And down here, which is the heart opposite Aquarius, you got Leo. So you got this blending of the ages, not just the age of Aquarius, it's the age of Leo as well, right? And Leo is the heart. But if you watch the Wizard of Oz and you've got the lion, I got no courage. I got no courage. And the lion's lost, right? Dorothy has to go and help the lion, the Tin Man, and the Scarecrow. The lion doesn't have courage because when we haven't got the courage to be in our heart, we're fucking lost. That's why we come to Earth, is to live in our heart here. And they know that, and they're so afraid of an awakened humanity living from their heart that for 20,000 years, they just keep resetting us, and they do it through what? Fear.
Yeah.
Fear is it's the opposite of love. The antidote to fear is love, literally. And where does that come from? Well, love is here. Yeah. And love is freeing, and love is empowering. And love isn't like where you have to love one another. No, you have to love yourself enough to say no. And that is an act of courage, and that's an act of leadership. And that emanates energy out into your reality, and it impacts people, and it gives them the courage to say, oh, shit. Well, why aren't you yelling in the streets? Why aren't you protesting? Why aren't you enraged? Because I'm in my heart. I'm at the place of the center of the universe right here beating inside me. I'm in love with myself and life. And I'm choosing that as my path. And that's what's going to dissolve the bullets and the metaphor of whatever the bullets. The bullets is just them throwing whatever they can at us. Yeah. So the likelihood of something like that occurring is extremely high. And I know a lot of your listeners have probably been looking at the stuff in association to 8/11. There's a lot of stuff going around on the internet, and a lot of decoding and symbolism and stuff showing up in the media and the news and the movies and all that stuff. And it sort of starts to weight up to a point where you're saying, hang on, this is more than coincidence. There's some programming going on here.
Yeah.
And you understand the nature of symbolic language, you understand it's programming, right? So you understand that programming and the language it speaks, you can sort of say, well, put all that together. That's okay. What are they foreshadowing here? Or what are they trying to forewarn us of? So this came across my radar recently, and I sort of keep an open mind and be like a little bit like, oh, okay, sure, yeah, oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's interesting. And one thing after the other, you sort of go, okay, there's a fair bit here. So if that's occurring, I want to directly look up and say, well, what's happening up there in the sky? Because if there's something to the nature of a 9/11 type event down here, there has to be something correlating up there. It's as above, so below. And if these events are pre-orchestrated, thought out in advance and pre-planned at specific times and events, well, what would the clock, date, time, calendar that they would use in order to say that's the time? The clock. That's the cosmic clock. Yeah. So I started looking into this recently, and I found some pretty strong connections and correlations to 8/11 in context to what's happening astrologically, but also how that astrology connects with the earth, and in particular where we live, Australia. So Australia's birth chart and our landmass as well. So I put a 3-part series. There's another video coming soon, but there's a 3-part series on my YouTube where I sort of break it down, start at the beginning, and I give, an example with 9/11 to say, well, look, this is the sort of thing that was going on astrologically 9/11 with a US birth chart. Can we see any sort of correlation, connection, or similarity to Australia? And it's pretty profound, the type of connection you can see. So does that mean it's absolutely certain? No, but the probability is extremely high. And when we're looking at astrological sort of, movements and connections and relationships, it's never one thing meaning one thing. There's always going to be lots of things meaning the same type of thing. And as that video series sort of has broken down, that's the evidence I've put forth. It's like there's a fair bit going on, and it just so happens to energetically connect specifically with Sydney, Australia, and the Australian birth chart in a way that's similarly eerily the same as the 9/11 type period of time. So my suggestion when I see that is to have precaution, right? Precautionary. So if the symbolism and the predictive programming and all of that is suggesting, certain dates and certain areas of the earth and certain types of experiences, and then the astrology supports it overwhelmingly, then you sort of put all that together and go, okay, well, maybe we can just act on that intuitive nudge and do what's in your own best interest. So my job is not to tell people what they should or shouldn't do. My job is to tell them the weather, and you decide whether you want to take a raincoat. I mean, you might like getting wet. Cool. Well, you're going to get wet. I can tell it's going to rain, you know, energetically speaking, but I don't know if you want to get wet. So it's a little bit like that when it comes to the next sort of, week or two. I mean, what's today's the 30th? So the 8th of November is only like 9 days away. Now, if that date comes and passes and nothing occurs, you'll have everyone, oh, there's bullshit. And again, I didn't set out to the sort of make claim and to be some sort of person to go, haha, I got it right. I'm just saying, well, here's what the weather suggests. If nothing significant happens, I'd be very surprised. I think we'll have some representation symbolically of this cosmic, battle playing out for us here in the physical. And it could be in such a way that it's quite huge and shocking and affecting a lot of people. But at the same time, too, it might be something that's happening on the individual level, which is just happening en masse. So
Yeah.
this could be something like, wow, my grandpa that just suddenly passed away, or my cousin or my neighbor who's committed suicide, like all of that type of thing, all
Yep.
happening all at once. And people going, well, what the fuck? And you go, oh, nothing really happened. See, like nothing happened in Sydney, but all of a sudden, like shitload of people coincidentally, simultaneously all transition. I mean, that could be seen as something as well. But do we get the evidence of that? Do we get the media coverage of that? No, we don't.
No.
We just get the personal experience of that. So it's not written in the sense of this is exactly what's going to happen. But when I look at the energetics and the symbolism suggested, plus all of the pre-programming of this, I would think that it could be geological. It could be something like on a geological level. So like earthquake, tsunami, volcano, movement, ruptures of a fault line, or an unexpected sort of like, whoa, that was pretty huge and chaotic. And I would be looking for something like that. But then there could be also a hijacking of the energetics, and there could be like a man's influence on such things. So like a directed energy weapon attack on a fault line, and there's an earthquake, and people go, "Oh, it's an earthquake." Like, yeah, but HARP, right? Fucking made that happen. So again, I don't know, but as an uptick energetically and cosmically, the end of this year with the Mars retrograde cycle that's begun already, it's not quite retrograde yet until December, but it's going into an opposition with Pluto, which it will do 3 times through a 6-month period. This is an uptick in tension and the release of that tension. Yeah. So, and the Pluto is representing the collective unconscious. And when you awaken the collective unconscious, the gates of hell are opened. And what was hidden and repressed and concealed becomes visible. And in a plutonic way, it's usually explosive and shocking, and it's an extreme amount of energy. That's why the active ingredient in a nuclear bomb is plutonium, right? So that's Pluto, plutonium. We only need a tiny little amount, and all you got to do is fucking divide it, split it, and kaboom. The release of energy is profound. So Pluto is that type of experience. If you've ever had a Pluto moment in your life, there's been a fucking major crisis that you've gone through that has changed your reality irrevocably. And that's like, oh, that's the hallmark of Pluto, and a complete death and a rebirth. And often death too with Pluto is a death and a transition for the soul. It's like the end of the soul's journey in the physical. So we're going to see an uptick in that. And we already are. I mean, I'm experiencing it in my own personal life with loved ones close that are really, not in good health at the moment. So, it's a lot for people to take back. See, if people that are still stuck in the Pisces illusion come across this, it's either too much, too overwhelming, or it creates fear and anxiety. So it's like you haven't yet taken responsibility for your worldview, deprogram yourself and started to move into your center, so you can't handle that because it's too much, right? So I feel for those people that have compassion, but at the same time, it's not going to stop me from saying what I see. Whereas the other side, those people like ourselves that have awakened, that chose a different path through COVID, that have started to look at the world differently, that know it's all programming and bullshit, when we come across this type of information, we have to stay centered in our heart and we have to stay at a level of detachment from it personally. So we
Yes.
say, hey, what do you mean? What do you mean? No, fucking hang on a second. Take responsibility here. Are you impacted by something if it were to occur? Okay, so what are you personally going to do about that? Or they'd tell us, they'd let us know that wouldn't happen. Ask yourself if you were living in, Manhattan, a week before September 11 and someone came and told you, hey, they're going to fucking fly planes into those buildings and bring them down. Go away.
Yep.
We call them and go on with your life, right? But after that, you'd probably thinking, oh, that fucking guy that said that was going to happen, shit, he was onto it. So if in your life at the moment you're coming across this type of information and awareness and it's sort of resonating, you're going, holy shit, okay, then you have the responsibility to act in your own best interests and the own best interests of your loved ones in a calm and detached way, not a hysterical way or a fearful way, but in a just very neutral way. Cool. I know what I'm doing. It's like why all the Jewish people in 9/11 weren't around and weren't in the buildings when they all took leave because Jewish mysticism through the Kabbalah teaches them the nature of symbolic communication, and they were forewarned, so they knew exactly what to do. Oh, it's September the 10th. I might take tomorrow off. Just go out in the country for a bit. Yeah, just my day off. No reason to cause panic or alarm. Just I'm just not going in today. And literally, that's what they did. They didn't communicate it. They didn't put it in news. They didn't say, "Hey, everyone, oh my God, this is going to happen." They just acted in their own best interests. So we sort of need to do that.
Mm.
And for everyone, that's going to be different. And again, if 8th of November comes and passes, nothing happens, just know that we're at the cusp of some cosmic changes that are going to be played out here on the earth over the next 3 years. And irrespective of whether 8/11 is something that is foretold or not, we're going into a time of chaotic change. And chaotic means unpredictable. Unpredictable. It's like, well, we don't know. It's unexpected, it's volatile in its nature, and it shifts quickly. So the preparation for that is do what's right in your best interest. Be prepared. I've said to people, even since COVID, you want at least 72 hours of food, water, and energy. So in the event that you can't call, you can't, turn on the power, you can't get on your car, you can't go anywhere, you're cool. You don't have to fucking run to Woolies with everyone else trying to buy toilet paper. You're sweet. And then if you are in one of the major city centers, especially around the 8th or 11th, I would probably say maybe take the day off and maybe just, you know, unless it's absolutely necessary and life depends on it. So what? Worst case scenario, 8/11 comes and goes, on the 9th, 10th, you're like, oh, well, you've had a couple of days off or a day off or something. So what? Cool.
Mm.
Hasn't affected her life. No harm, no foul. So this sort of is more, it's broken down more in my YouTube series. So I encourage people to go and check that out. Individually, there's going to be the collective expression of these energies, but individually, it's going to activate us in all unique, specific ways. So personal path and navigation and guidance that's what I do when I read for people, is I look at all that in context to you, and not only you, but where you're at, because when you were born to where you are, there's a shift and a change in you and your energetics. So your birth chart evolves through time, and I have to look at that evolution in context to the now and put it all together in a story and go, okay, something's going on here with your relationship. What's happening? Oh yeah, well, we're not, he's this and I'm that, and okay, well, that's coming to a head. So what are you doing about that? And helping people stay in their heart centered through those types of changes. So as we get into this end of this year and into next year, I do what they call year ahead readings. So I'm doing those at the moment, and I sort of look out for the next 12 months and just map out month by month and help people navigate so that they've got awareness. And when you have awareness, you can have preparedness, and awareness and preparedness, you're good. And the only other missing ingredient is to stay in your heart. It's like if there is darkness in their world, if there is fear and hate and violence and death, then there's even more reason for us to be centered in our heart with love and grace and compassion, and they trick us by turning us off and turning us off and turning us off, and they do it through fear to trigger us back into our base chakra and our primal energies of fight, flight, and survival. So here they're going to go again and trigger us back into that space so they can manipulate and control us and take control of the next stage. But we have to say no. And I'm not going to succumb to the fear or the hatred or the division or any of that. There's a different way here. There's the left, there's the right, there's the dark, there's the light, there's the middle. There's the middle. And Aquarius is a fixed air sign. It's objective. It's neither left or right. It's in the middle. It's the middle path is the way. And you have to get into the middle path, you have to stay centered. The second you go, I don't like that, or I hate that, or I love that and not that, you're out of the center. You got to practice that central non-detachment, or non-attachment, excuse me, non-attached, okay? And that's going to help guide you. And when you are non-attached, your intuition is going to be much stronger, and your reality, your higher self, is going to be communicating with you in a way in which you go, yeah, not going to work today. But if you're in fear and panic, I don't know what to do. What should I do? I've got this thing planned. I'm supposed to be going to Coldplay. I don't know if I should get on that plane. You got to get in your heart, detach from all of that shit, and do what your heart says is best for you. And then you have to trust that what that is the right path. It's not up for your chart or me or anyone to help you. It's just to bring that awareness so you can make those decisions from that central place.
Yeah.
And that's the awakening of the Christ within us. And we all do that collectively, energetically. We shift into the age of Aquarius. If we don't, they reset us. We stay in this pseudo age. So those that control are in the age of Aquarius, and we're stuck asleep, stuck in the Piscean illusion and deception. And they'll, if it's not obvious what they've done and they're going to do since COVID, is they're just eliminating that level of consciousness. They're removing it.
Yep.
Depopulating it, if you want to
I
look at it
agree.
like that. That's obvious. That's what they're doing. And they're giving everyone the free choice. Yeah. Yeah, there may be manipulation, coercion, there may be deception, but it's still at the end of the day, every one of us has a choice. Those that don't, because of misfortune, because of their age, because of their disability, whatever, that's who we have to hold the hand for and go, hey, I got you. Yeah. And then also those that are awakening their consciousness, we got to say, hey, it's all good. Come to the party.
And that's a good way to sort of lead into the next part of this. Oh, that was awesome, that last 20 minutes. Like, I'm going to listen to that back and just, I reckon you were talking to me there at some point of that too. I was like, I could feel like my intuition and I resonate with everything you were saying. I feel like you were talking to me as well, which is pretty cool. Anyway, I just wanted to just touch on, there's a lot to sort of go with there, isn't there? I was actually going to go somewhere with that. Now I can't bloody remember. Interesting, isn't it? Because you said we're going from a feminine into a masculine. So has that been that LGBT stuff? Is that the manifestation of that? So you said it with climate change too, which if I'm not kicked off YouTube, I will be now, having said all that. But I'm just just
Yeah.
saying that manifested into the LG stuff. Is that
Yeah.
what that
So,
is? Yeah. Because I just wanted to touch on that.
yep. So they're after the feminine, and
Yes.
because we're ending the age of Pisces, but we've been in the age of Pisces under the patriarchy. So even though we should be in the age of Pisces, the patriarchy has maintained control over us. So in the age of Aquarius, it's the awakening of both, not one over the other. And it's not the feminine then taking place of the masculine, it's the union of the two. So, there is this attack on that feminine. Absolutely. The symbols, and any organization or group or association that's after the feminine from an ideological perspective, they'll say things like, we're all in this together. We're all in this together, right? And what they mean is we're all in this to get her. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it was like Hillary Clinton's campaign 2016. We're in this together. Yeah, we were. We were in this to get her. That's what they're after. They're after that divine feminine.
Yeah.
She's that creative force. So that's a separate issue to the trans movement. I feel like there's two aspects to the trans. When you get to the end of an age, to get from Pisces, which is mutable water, into Aquarius, which is fixed air, how do you get water into air? If we want to change water into air, how do you do it? You
Well,
turn the
that's
heat,
mm,
you boil it, right? If you boil water, it turns to steam and vapor, and that's air. So they're boiling the Pisces ideologies, right? And it's causing transmutation.
here we
At
go.
the end of an age, the alchemical transition between one element to the next, from water
Yeah,
to air, is transmuted.
that makes
So
sense. Yeah.
transmutation is being played out through people here, and they're going, well, I'm not that, I'm this. And it's like, well, you're caught up in that. You're supposed to detach from that and not identify with that process. But we're playing the Game of Thrones and the collective consciousness and unconsciousness, there are going to be people that are caught in that trap and that actually will transmutate.
Yeah.
And the other part of it, I guess, is that they're trying to, and this is done unnaturally, right? Not naturally. And when it's done unnaturally, you got to look to the UN as who's behind it, because that they're the un people. Anything that's unnatural is the UN's agenda, right? That's why they're called the UN,
Correct.
um, right? And they're trying to get us to acceptance of everything, right? Because this is this fake pseudo Aquarian ideological energy. We've got to accept everyone. We're all in like this together. No, no, no. You've got to accept yourself.
Yes.
Individuality, not individuality like fuck you, I'm on my own and I'm just going to take what I can. That's egoism. Yeah. Individuality is I'm free and I accept you to be free, but you don't tell me that I have to see you a certain way or that I have to treat you a certain way because you identify in a certain. No, no, that's now I'm not free anymore. You're trying to control how I should be. And that's not Aquarian. Aquarian is objectivity,
Yeah.
objective, detached from that. That's identity, right? And when we identify with that, we're caught in that trap. So this process of the changing of the A's, this transmuting of water to air, you got people caught up in it. And that's what we've got is the transmute movement and all of the alphabet that they want to
Yep.
identify with, right?
Mm.
And it's like, cool, I got nothing wrong with someone and wanting to identify. What my problem is that I have to then identify you in the same way. I don't. That's your world, that's your life, that's your identity, that's your individuality. Cool. I can accept that's how you want to see yourself, but you can't make me accept you to see you that way either.
Yeah.
That's not inclusivity, that's exclusivity. That's saying you're got to be treated differently because you identified some way. No, we should all be treated equally, irrespective of how we identify. But if you can't accept me and my heterosexualism and my masculinity and my, well, then hang on, what? I got to make a space for you, but not the other way around. So it's a pseudo Aquarian-esque control system by the UN to sort of, because see, they want the one world government so that they can be in control still. So they know we're going to this next stage and they want to reset us so they can go into this UN agenda. It's unnatural.
Yeah.
This process of the shift of age should happen naturally as you naturally awaken and you start to get into your heart center and you start to change and transform and transition. But when they put an agenda over the top, that's because someone, organization or ideology or people in hidden rooms and secret handshakes want to maintain their level of power control. So they do it and they have an agenda behind it. And the poor people that are caught up in it, unconsciously from the age of Pisces, swept up in this and they're like, they're free because I can be a cat.
Yep.
You're trapped in their mind control and you're staying now under their agenda and you're going to be controlled by that unnatural agenda. So, yeah.
Mm. Well
That ends.
summed up. I just wanted to touch on two more things and we'll call it a day. I know we've been going for a bit, but people that have been listening and following me for a while, and you as well, will listen to every single word you've said because it's been bloody absolutely awesome what you've shared today. You said a lot about heart center and talking about coming from that heart. But that's with the world. I believe the inner world is representation of the outer world. So we need to come into a space of heart center in our own inner world. All that chaos and all that turmoil you're talking about worldly will be mirrored back to us in our own lives. We're going to have all of this shit play out in our own lives. We're going to have tower moments in our own lives. Things are going to end. We're going to rebirth. We're going to die. All of these things are going to play out in our own world. I believe that is coming into our heart center, is having all of that chaos and turmoil play out in our own lives as we evolve, transform from the original awakening. Because I know for me, Luke, 4 years ago, I wrote to the world truth through a good buddy of mine, Dale Holmes, who you'll be on the STE speaking for. We'll get to that at the end. I was just saying that then the year later, like my own life just fucking went upside down. Like I had stuff come up and tower moments and falling through tables and all this stuff. It's like, well, that was my stuff and then my change and my evolution. It's like, well, we need the people to sort of awaken to all that stuff, but they need to dive in deep with who they truly are and go on that journey themselves in the inner world. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So individually, we've all had an opportunity. Well, if we're ripened for that transmission and transition, we've had an opportunity to awaken. And when you do, yes, it's chaotic because you're coming out of a deceptive illusion and you've been a certain type of yourself that's not the true self, and you build a life for you. So as you move into the true self, more centered and heart centered, all that has to break
Yep.
down. And when it does, it's chaotic.
Yeah.
So as that's been playing out for individually, I feel what's going to happen next is they're going to trigger that collectively because they're like,
Yep.
we've given you this opportunity, the COVID, all of that, and you still haven't. So now we're going to activate you. And that
Ah,
could be the people losing their mind and
yep.
becoming crazy. And yeah, we're going to be here saying, yeah, all of that, you got to let all that go.
Yeah.
You got to stay here. What really matters at the end of the day, you got to let that go. And that's like the old you, right? You didn't want to be that person because it wasn't who your true, authentic self was aligned with. So you had to become someone new. And that life that that old person built, you had to let go.
Yeah.
And as you let go, and to the extent that you could do that, and how much attached you were to it, was to the extent that you felt it play out chaotically. So, and the impact of that, and it's that's the hard part. That's the work I do, is I help people go through that because I did it in the dark and alone and frightened and kept it all to myself and made a lot of fucking mistakes along the way.
Yeah, I did
So I'm
too.
like, oh, okay, that's the process that I go, okay, cool. Well, I've got you. You're awake now. Yeah, yeah, you got to leave the job. Yeah, that relationship isn't going to change. You have to, right?
Yeah.
So all that type of thing to help people, to reassure them, to say, yeah, you're on the right path. But
Yep.
guess what? That shit, you built that by not being you.
Yep.
So that whole reality is not associated to you. It's associated to who you thought you were supposed to be. You have to let it go. And
Mm.
this world, this conditioned matrix, has convinced us of who we should be, and we've built life, society, and culture from it. So
Yep.
you imagine when that has to all end and come down. En masse, you got people, what the fuck?
Mm.
That's the illusion has to. We're going through the transition of the age. I see in deception and illusion, the fantasy is coming to an end in a really fast way. So prepare. And the way you transition is you stay here and you know that what is falling away isn't aligned, and what
Yes.
remains is aligned. So you might have friends that I've known him since kindergarten, and all of a sudden you go through awakening and you have a falling out. Oh, I can't believe we've been friends. So you are in your heart now, and obviously you weren't through the creation of that reality. That part of you is dying, so therefore they need to die within your life.
Yeah.
That's the
Well said.
symbolism of an ending for them in your reality. Some can end and they trigger an awakening and they come back. And I've found that when I went through this, right, I've got people from when I went to school and from people that I knew just pre to my awakening that have recently gone, holy shit, Balcke. oh, you're going to STE conference. Oh man, you're really like, it's like, yeah, I've been doing this for fucking years. But they come back around, and the ones that do are aligned, and the ones that don't aren't. But 8 billion souls on Earth, you're not aligned with everyone.
Yeah. Mm.
Not everyone has to be love and light and friends. It's just
Well
not possible.
said.
And that's the age of Aquarius. We think it's, oh, we're all coming together in this big one humanity. No, we're coming together as individuals
Yeah.
within a collective. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and I accept that's, hey, you want to be over there and call yourself a cat? Cool. Fuck no. Good. But now I have to change the bathroom for cat litter in the fucking corner? No, 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 no. That's not how it works. That's not how it works. You want to go there and do that there? I got no problems whatsoever. But you want to come in here now to the way in which we govern and run and organize sort of society and how we live and say, oh, it has to be this way because I'm a cat.
Yeah.
Mistaken. Very mistaken. The
This.
pathway forward for those types of people that are stuck identifying in any form of identity is not a great pathway forward. Yeah. When you're in the heart, you don't have to have an identity. You're in the heart. You're in
Yeah.
home. You don't have to have identity. It's not important. You know, your
Because you realize
individuality,
because you realize you're so much more than just that, don't you?
you're a fractal of God.
Yeah.
You're a fractal of God. But I'm Luke. I use Luke as my vehicle so that my soul can be here. That's all. I
Yeah.
don't have
Well
to be
said,
attached
man.
to Luke. Like, and that's how you confront people online that go, oh, I get all the time with my YouTube shit. They're saying stuff. Oh, that's when I do this, right? I always do that. Peace out, because like peace out in my videos. That's my research suggests that's the Baphomet symbol.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm identified with Luke and that, I'm like, oh, fuck you, man. You don't know what you're talking about. But I just go, actually, that's the Saturn and Jupiter symbol, and they're separated. So church and state should never be together. They should always be divided. That's what brings peace. But when we put them together and we do that, that's Baphomet. Because now we're saying we're going to put them and unite them and control them and bring that energy down here to control Earth, right? So, and then you got this one, which the Royals like, because that's power and money and war, and
Mm.
that's the monarch. They always doing that symbol. So like I can detach from me as an attack on me. Oh, you don't understand. I'm just doing the peace symbol to, well, actually, this is what it is. You're mistaken, and your idea of who I am is completely mistaken because I'm only being Luke. I'm actually not Luke. I'm just being him. That's why I'm called a human being, and I'm choosing to
Yeah.
be Luke. This is the version of Luke that you see because the old version of me, the pest controller in that old life, I let him die so I could be this version. But ultimately, it's just a vehicle for me to be. It's not who I am. And at the end of this life, when I'm no longer needing that vehicle, I'll step out and I'll put on my spiritual cloak and off I go into the great beyond. So whilst I'm here, there is usefulness to Luke, but I don't need to be attached to it as like, well, I'm Luke, you know? It's like, fuck that. Luke's just the vehicle. It's just, and that's what we got to, if your vehicle is a cat, cool, fuck, you can be the cat. Right. But I have to then see you as the cat. Hang on a second. No, I can see you as I want to see you. Yeah. That's it. So anyway, we digress again.
No, but that was a very powerful, powerful piece of advice and a very powerful way to sort of wrap all this up. And to sort of wrap all this up, Luke, I just want to ask you if someone's watching this right now, which there probably will be, because a lot of the people do watch this that are sort of on different levels of consciousness, which is great. What would be your advice to that person that has actually learned so much from this podcast just by listening to you? And they're like, holy fuck. They're having that little that moment you talk about right now. They're just going right fuck. Like, what would be your advice to that person now to sort of navigate the next part or the next probably 12 months here or the next couple
Well,
of years? Yep.
you are not alone.
Yeah, well
You are
said.
not crazy. You are worthy of a life of love. Yeah. Yeah. It's scary,
Mm.
but nothing was ever conquered of greatness by not allowing that fear to prevent us. So, in other words, you can do it. You can do the thing you're afraid of.
Yep.
Yeah. And you'll gain so much from doing that. And um, at the end of the day, none of this shit's real. We make it
Yeah.
real. We make it real. We give it meaning, we give it importance, we identify, we say that is this and that's how we do it. But at the end of the day, that's the illusion. That's why it's called Maya. And the job is not to be caught up in the Maya or the illusion, so that we can just pass through and have these experiences and live from our heart and feel content and have those enriching, beautiful moments, and then transition to the next phase of our journey and evolution. And it isn't about a goal or a destination. It's the pathway you take to get there. And what you're going to remember when it's all said and done is all of the path and the journey along the experience. It's not going to be what you obtained or the success you got or how what you have. It's going to be how you got there, how you lived, how you enjoyed the little things and the moments. No one's going to get to the end of this journey and look back and go, I wish I had more. I wish I worked more. They're going to go, fuck, I wish I just didn't take things so serious. I wish I had spent more time giving love and sharing love and seeing the beauty in my life and myself and the world around me. That's what
Yeah.
regrets are going to be. So just know that as you're making these transitions, you're not alone. It's frightening, but you can do it afraid. It's okay. There is support, and you're not crazy. The world is, but don't get caught up in it.
That was awesome. Oh, yeah. That last little couple of minutes. Oh, yeah, Luke, I love talking to you, bro. Like, I need to come down to the Gold Coast and meet you. Like, I could sit and just listen to you speak. Like, I've barely said a word. Like, I could sit here and listen to you speak for hours, and I'll just sit like a sponge and go, just, that's all. You're an awesome man, Luke. You're such a wealth of knowledge, and I'm so grateful I found you 18 months ago. Like we need to keep in touch a bit more often and come together and do these a bit more because they are popular. And I thank you so much for taking the time to jump on today and giving my listeners and my viewers a lot to consider and a lot to sort of ponder on. And I know for me, I think you spoke to my heart there a couple of times, and I need to go back and listen to this again to sort of, yeah, get the nuggets out of that. Luke, yeah, where can people find you if they're new to you too? Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
so I'm not sure when this is going to go out, but
Yep.
you're wanting to connect personally for some sort of astrological guidance and sort of put you on your path and help you understand your life and your path forward, especially through the next 12 months. I do 2025 year ahead readings. I've already started them. I'm booked out until January. So if you want to book in and you want to get it done, I only run these types of readings until the end of Jan.
Yep.
So if you want, don't miss out. Your viewers, I'll give you a code for them, and they'll the $50 off I've got at the moment runs out on the end of October. But
Yep.
for anyone watching this particular podcast, if at any time between now and the end of this year they want to schedule that session, we'll give them a special code they can use, and I'll know they've come from this particular podcast, and they'll get that $50 off.
Oh, awesome. That code will be in the show notes when this goes up. I'll tell you off air when this goes up, Luke. Thank you so much for sharing your time today.
Pleasure, mate. Thanks for having me.
I
Look forward to
love,
the next one.
I just love getting you on. All right. This has been the Breaking Free podcast, guys. If you have any questions, if you're watching on YouTube, Luke's doing some symbols. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you so much for tuning in and listening wherever in the world you are. If you want to follow Luke, Luke's social media will be in the show notes. He does post some really awesome stuff, and he does post some personal stuff too, which I love seeing the photos of him just being silly and crazy. So, Luke, thank you so much, man, again, and I really appreciate your time. So, thank you, everyone. I'll talk to you all soon. Cheers.